Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So get down. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So
what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing tonight? This is Shabazz with the proper perspective, coming to you live. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. How y'all doing out there? How y'all doing out there? We getting it started. How y'all doing? Shout out to everybody tuning in. Shout out to everybody tuning in. This is Shabazz with the proper perspective. What we talking about tonight? We talking about Burkina Faso, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we talking about. I'm taking a trip overseas, metaphysically and literally, but not just yet. But we're going to talk about Burkina Faso tonight, and we're going to touch on a couple of things about how it relates to us in the diaspora. But let me set the stage. Let me try to set the stage. Again, I always got to make sure that the mic is right. So let me do a quick little mic check. Okay, we got the mic check situated. Everything sounds like it's appropriate. Hopefully some people join in, sending off the notifications to all the appropriate places. So as we get it started, let me just set the scene a little bit. You know, I'll say this: before a storm, there's silence. A charge, kind of quiet. Before a revolution, there's a whisper that travels across oceans and deserts. And right now, from the Sahel to the South Bronx, something old is being reborn. But it's not being born out of anger. It's being reborn out of clarity. It's not being reborn to destroy. Well, maybe. Sometimes it is. It's being born to reclaim. More so than destroy. So today, what I want you to do is don't just listen. Today, I want you to remember. Like Michael Jackson said, do you remember? I ain't no singer, so don't throw that at me. Remember the ancestors who spoke in Proverbs. Remember the ancestors who marched in silence on the African continent and over here in the diaspora. There was marches, there was protests, there was live, there were silent ones in the US. There were some in Canada. There were some in Jamaica. We are a protesting people, so to speak. But remember the ancestors who spoke in Proverbs, who fought in shadows and built in the daylight. Because this new thing going on, this resurge going on, this rebirth going on, this is one of those moments that our ancestors warned us about, where truth and courage meet. And sometimes we might even say where they collide. Where tea ain't just for sipping. Oh no, ladies and gentlemen, tea is for stirring. We're going to stir the tea tonight. Or at least we're going to make a good faith effort. So now, if I was in a full-fledged studio, I would say, cue the African drumming. But we ain't there yet. So let me just move on into, thank y'all for tuning in. Let me make sure, because I got some. Let me make sure that I send off the right notifications. Shout out to Osar Winkler, who joined in on Instagram. Shout out to all the beautiful people who joined in on TikTok. Brandon Colbert 5, Carson Caro, Alex Endermool, Paper Walls, Taurus, Roxy Boo, Nora, Neuro N, Clooney, JDT, Pops Nation. Shout out to everybody on Instagram. I'm not going to be able to read all your names. Please don't take offense. I have a very hard time with Instagram. But thank you for tuning in wherever you're tuning in from. I'm over here coming live and direct through my little software programs on youtube.com/@theproperperspective. That's the best place to catch me. But wherever you are, hit the like button or tap the screen and throw those hearts up or what have you. Give me some donations if that's what it takes. But welcome to The Proper Perspective, where we don't just sip the tea, ladies and gentlemen. We brew it strong. Strong like they do in Senegal, where they call it ataya, a potent green tea that comes to you through rituals. And in the ritual, it starts bitter, it gets sweeter with each pour, and it pulls you into a deep conversation, whether you're ready for it or not. So that's what we're going to try to do tonight. It's hospitality, it's hustle, and it's heritage, all in a glass or a conversation. Speaking of glasses, a little bit of my attire, if you don't mind. So tonight, this afternoon, whatever you may be, if you're in the chat room, let me know where you're tuning in from. Are you tuning in from the West, the U.S., the Caribbean? Are you tuning in from the motherland? Let me know. So what we're talking about, we're going to dive into what I'm calling a seismic shift that's shaking the very foundations of West African economics. Y'all heard of ECOWAS? So now, if you heard of ECOWAS, drop something in the chat. Put a 1 if you heard of ECOWAS. Put a 2 if you don't know what in the world that is. But we got Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. 3 West African nations. And they've decided that, you know something, we done with this monopoly money. We done with the games from the West, where the IMF and other Western financial lords like to play shakedown, get down, or lay down. No, these 3 West African countries, these 3 Sahelian countries, have launched what is called, or what they're calling, the Confederate Bank for Investment and Development. What? What is this? It's a financial fortress, ladies and gentlemen. It's built with an initial capital of over $820 million. This is their money. This ain't France. This ain't Germany. This ain't England. This ain't America. This is not the IMF giving them a loan. This ain't even China giving them a loan. This is all money that coming from their own countries, from their own investments, from their own rare earth materials that everybody is so quick to try to get their grubby hands on. That's right. They've decided no more begging, no more coming to you hat in hand, no more strings attached. We're done with that. The days of the puppet master are fastly coming to an end. You know, Elijah Muhammad said, Babylon is falling. Y'all ain't believing. Nah, these 3 African nations are funding their own development projects. And they're funding them specifically for agriculture, infrastructure, and renewable energy. 3 of the biggies, 3 of the big boys. Shout out to Absolute Justice who joined in on Instagram. Y'all can send me a wave. Y'all can drop a 1 in the chat or in the message board or whatever else it's called. Throw some hearts. Throw some hearts if you can. Shout out to Jonetta C3. Shout out to C3 just hit something. Shout out to everybody. So again, we're talking about Burkina Faso. We're talking about West Africa. In fact, not only are these three African countries, West African countries, not only are they joining forces in more ways than one, specifically the Traore administration in Burkina Faso has completely rejected an IMF extended credit facility outright. They just said, you know something, you can pack your bags. This is considered a bold declaration. Why? Because they don't want any more handouts tied to foreign interests. They said no to the fine print because that's how they get us all. The fine print, you know, they say the devil is in the details. Where if we can catch hell signing up for some stuff with Uncle Sam over here and we citizens, you best believe they got tricks out the yin yang when they go overseas. And these three West African countries have said, you know something? We have grown up our whole lives dealing with all of the puppet strings you guys come with. We don't want it no more. Now, the rest of the African countries got to make a decision. They're going to have to, you know, I don't know what they're going to do, but I know their citizens is looking. Their citizens is like, wait a minute. Well, if Ibrahim Traore can do it, why can't you, Mr. President? So yes, they've said no to the fine print. They've said no to the puppet strings. And by rejecting the IMF's extended credit facility, Burkina Faso is signaling that it has its own commitment. It has its own interests at heart. They're pursuing an independent economic path, free from the conditions often attached to international aid. And it's sending ripples and shockwaves all across the continent, not just because of its bold endeavor, but like I said, because Africans everywhere are noticing that their own homegrown, y'all heard that word lately? Homegrown, Trump's new favorite word. They're recognizing that their own homegrown leaders can stand up, reject the West, and make progress in good old Thomas Sankara style. And they can survive 19 assassination attempts in doing it. So what y'all think about that? Y'all remember the Arab Spring a few years ago? Maybe we sitting on the cusp of, maybe we witnessing the beginning of the African Spring. What do these three West African, or should I say Sahelian, or should I say, what do these three former ECOWAS states, what do they know that the rest of us seem to be aloof to? And I mean all of us, the rest of us all. I mean continental Africans. I mean diaspora Africans. Seems to me that they know that independence is gold, or maybe I should say independence is platinum. No, not platinum plan. We ain't messing with that gilded coin. But they know that it's not a prize. Independence, that is. They know it's not a prize that you flash on Instagram, that you take poses with for your Facebook reels or whatever. No, they know the independence is something that you got to grind for just as much as, if not more than, you talk about it. See, over here in the West, we like to talk about it. Most of us do. Now, of course, there's some things that traps us into having the conversation as opposed to working in the real, but still, we love to talk about it. But Ibrahim Traore, or I should say, but Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they ain't about to talk, or they ain't about only talking. They know that independence must be fought for, and not fought for in a haphazard way, and not fought for just on Instagram. They know that the fight has to be well organized, highly orchestrated, and there has to be unity. They are working in a unified manner together. All three of them got out of ECOWAS because they said, look, ECOWAS been around since we was little kids. And y'all ain't did the do. So we gonna we gonna walk away from this table. We're gonna try something different. We're gonna try real unity. We're gonna try real solidarity. And they're doing it. They're organized, they're highly orchestrated, and they're unified. Now, this reminds me, I gotta throw up. Ooh, that don't sound good. I gotta throw out there a proverb or two, a West African proverb or two. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to this whole thing about independence, the Yoruba have a proverb that says, a man who uses another's firewood often ends up cooking what he doesn't eat. Let that sink in. A man who uses another's firewood, he who uses another man's firewood, often ends up cooking what he cannot eat. Now, I ain't just making this stuff up. I found this little jewel of a gem of a proverb in a collection of proverbs by Oyekan Owomoyela. Oyekan Owomoyela. Now, if you happen to be Yoruba, if you happen to speak Yoruba and you want to, drop something in the comment and tell me I'm saying it wrong, I will apologize. I ain't no expert and I do not speak the language. Wish I did. Looking for a teacher. So y'all know somebody that's willing to teach online, holla at me. But anyhow, this proverb, he who uses another man's firewood often ends up cooking what he doesn't eat. What does this mean? Using someone else's resources means surrendering control. These nations, these West African nations, these Sahelian nations, the AES, these nations have learned the hard way that until they own the pot, own the fire, own the ingredients, and control them all, they'll never eat their own recipe. Now I'm going to bring this other person up a couple times. But didn't Elijah Muhammad tell us to do for self? Because that's what the Proverbs sound like to me. Maybe I'm wrong. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the proverb is telling us to do for self. And I know Elijah Muhammad told us do for self. Not only did he tell us, he sent Brother Malcolm to the lecture scene and told him, tell him, do for self. And that's what Brother Malcolm taught. What we waiting for? We didn't heed the word when Elijah Muhammad said it. We didn't heed the word when Brother Malcolm said it. Some of us did. Some of us tried. A lot of us got thrown in jail. But what are we waiting for? Nowadays, we can take a look and be like, okay, look. All right, if they're doing for self in West Africa, when is it our turn? When are we supposed to be jumping on that boat? Everything that we need to be focused on should be considered breaking the chains. That's what we need to be doing. Now, this is not just about, the attention of it and the admiration towards it. It's not about the money. It's about reclaiming sovereignty. That the S word, that funny little word that the Moors or whatever name they're going by these days, they like to talk about it. You don't have no nationality. What's your nationality? You ain't got no sovereignty. Well, okay, I jest. I gotta say, yeah, there is something real in that word. There's some power to that word. But I'm not co-signing the Moors. I'm sorry. I'm just not. I'm not co-signing the Moors. Their version of sovereignty, it lives rent-free in their own heads. And it gets you locked up like our brother Wesley Snipes. Or shot at. Or even killed like our sister Corrine Gaines. But I digress. I shouldn't be talking about that. We're going to talk about the IMF. I said we was going overseas tonight. We're going to talk about the IMF. Now, the IMF has had nations tangled up in debt traps longer than we've been paying for Sally Mae loans. But now, They're cutting those cords. Who is they? Not IMF. IMF is trying to redo the cords. No, these three African nations, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, are cutting cords quicker than Generation Z canceled cable. And you know what that reminds me of? The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. That Igbo proverb. That Igbo proverb that I've thrown out there a couple of times. How does this relate? Well, when you're denied support, the West African nations, you end up in a position, in a situation where you're going to have to create your own power by any means necessary. These countries aren't asking to be embraced anymore. They're building their own village and burning a few bridges in doing so. Now, I can't say what's the real reason. The real reason for me talking about this, I mean, hey, I'm a Pan-Africanist. I love Black people. I love Africa. I love everything that's going to move us or move us towards the right direction or in the right direction. But I noticed something that I don't see a lot of people talking about. In the case of these three West African nations, they are joining together, they are pooling their resources, and they're figuring out new ways to work together. Now, over here, so I can't help but ask, and don't shoot the messenger, or rather, just don't shoot me. Where is this kind of action in our own community? I mean, to this date, we've had an extensive number of Black organizations. Some of them have been African-centered, some of them have not. But they've all been committed to, at least on paper, to the idea of being for the progress and the advancement of Black people. We got the Nation of Islam, the Moorish Science Temple of America. We got the Nation of Gods and Earths. We got African Methodist Episcopalian AME Church. We got the Church of God in Christ, the National Baptist Convention. What is it? The Divine Nine. We got the NAACP. We got the National Urban League. I mean, the list goes on and on. All these organizations got deep pockets. All these organizations got their hands on real estate or connections to other groups with hands-on real estate. They got media platforms. They got schools. But what are we doing together? You see, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they all withdrew from the current organization program, ECOWAS, and said we have to build something that unites us so that we can work together. So what would happen if all our organizations, our Black Christians, our Black Muslims, our Black Hebrew Israelites, and our Moors, and our atheists, and our Divine Nine, what happens if we all stop debating doctrine? What happens if we all stop debating ideology and stop pointing fingers and chose to build one economic organism? I mean, we do a lot of start and stopping, is what I see. We even most recently, we started up the whole, what was it? Black Project 2025. And before it got off the ground, all the arrows came out. All the bullets was thrown. Now that's gone. Meanwhile, even the Caribbean nations have gotten themselves together to form CARICOM to work in unison the same way those three West African states have done. And CARICOM is working on getting reparations. Now, before you start slinging your delineation and tether, whatever other buzzword Tariq Nasheed's cult has suckered you into swallowing like Jim Jones Kool-Aid, before you start throwing that at me, CARICOM is pursuing reparations from England, and they're doing it at the UN. They're not talking to Uncle Sam. They're not addressing Uncle Sam. These are black governments. Okay, so we don't got a black government. That's why I said organizations, because we don't. And so far, I don't even know if we're allowed to have a black government. Although the Native Americans got one, so we can get it if we worked on it. But that's another story. But CARICOM is pursuing their reparations through the United Nations. That's the same place Brother Malcolm told us to go. But we, in our infinite integrationist wisdom, decided to tough it out within the confines of the good old Uncle Sam. And you see what that's gotten us. So I'm just saying, I asked earlier, what is it that the three West African nations know that we don't? What is it that the Caribbean nations know and we don't? I really need an answer. But let me throw that all to the side. Let me move on. I don't want to belabor the point. Because if you're feeling me, then you can drop something in the comments and let me know what's popping. Shout out to everybody. I see I got a friendly and familiar in the YouTube comments. So shout out. I don't know if they want me to put their name out there, but I ain't gonna put their name out there like that. But so let me move on. Because I do think it's funny. Yeah, I'm talking about this. I'm talking about it because I stay glued to international news. So I don't stick around. I don't wait for CNN. I don't wait for Fox News. Lord help me if I did. But I look for international news. So that's one of the reasons I think I know something about this, that, and the other. But I do think it's funny how the mainstream media is quieter than a church mouse on this stuff. Now, if this were a scandal, they would be front page news. If it were fake stories about white farmers in South Africa getting slaughtered, CNN and Fox both would be trying to beat down the door to have a correspondent on the ground. They'd be breaking the sound barrier to go live. But 3 African nations rejecting colonial finance, 3 African nations investing in their own futures, 3 African nations controlling their own rare earth minerals and calling the shots and setting the prices instead of taking whatever gets thrown at them. Crickets. Y'all know why? Because if the lion doesn't tell his story, the hunter will. So that's what they're doing. The hunters are trying to tell the story. And as far as they're concerned, there is no story. There's nothing going on here. Move along, folks. Silence from this side, however, it doesn't mean peace. It doesn't mean tranquility. And it doesn't mean that the West is in control. It's simply, if anything, it only means that someone else is controlling the narrative or trying to keep control of the narrative. But like I said, when you break away from domestic media, you learn a thing or two. Now, a lot of y'all might be able to testify on this one fact simply because all this new Chinese media, social media blitzing coming around because Trump is trying to save face because Trump is losing the narrative on the tariff war. And now China is telling everybody the truth about all those luxury goods. See, if we were tapped into international news, we might already know this information. I do think it's a little funny. I do think it's a bit hilarious that everybody is excited about all of this information. I sit back and I kind of knew this 20, 30 years ago. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's maybe the majority of the people that are excited about finding out that luxury French and European brands are quadruple pricing their goods for the customers. Maybe the young folk didn't know it. I would think that older folk might would have known it, but hey, like I said, I try to keep my ear to the international news networks. That's why it's up to us to amplify this kind of news before it's buried. It's not like, I mean, the brothers are strong and solid. They gonna rock and roll and they gonna do their thing and they gonna make it work for their countries. So the truth can't be buried, but awareness of the truth can be buried. And that's what Western media banks on. Awareness of the truth. They know they can't stop it. But if they can stop you from being aware of it, even back during the plantation days, they knew they couldn't stop certain revolutions, rebellions, revolts. But what they wanted to control was the information. As long as nobody knew about the plantation down the road that got took over or demolished and burned to the ground, then they could rest assured it wouldn't happen up the street. But when the information spreads, that's when there's a problem. That's why J. Edgar Hoover said, do anything and everything to keep the information from spreading. We don't want a black messiah because it will set off a firestorm of information spreading, which is directly connected and linked to unity and solidarity. But so it's up to us to amplify this kind of news. And that's one reason why I'm like, yeah, I'm going to talk about Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger tonight. You know, the Western media, they just want you to ignore all the real important stuff, you know, like that undeclared war that's going on in Yemen, another deeply melanated country that they got their eyes fixated on with the Yahtzee tattoo chested P.D. Hegseth. You know, the guy that almost botched the war in and of itself, and it's not even declared. So I digress. I guess I get a kick out of digressing. But what's very important to this story is investment in the future, self-investment. You know, that good time that we in the Black community keep threatening ourselves with. But these empty threats don't impress nobody. At least not the youth, not the elders, not even the ancestors are impressed with empty threats like that. But cross the water, the African nations, oh, they bout that life. They walk it like they talk it. You know, the Akan in Ghana, they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The second best time is now. We need to feel the zeitgeist of urgency. You can't time travel and undo colonialism. You can't time travel and undo slavery. Lord, I wish we could. But you can build something today that your great grandchildren will eat from. Now, I know that's a hell of a goal, especially when you come up in a microwave culture where everything is supposed to be super quick right now and for me, myself, and I. That's an ideology we're going to have to figure out a way to ditch. Maybe we can ditch it if we connect the dots and start looking outside of the box known as Uncle Sam's dominion. Now, no matter what the IMF tries to do, God willing, they will not be able to stop what is taking place. Because Burkina Faso Mali and Niger, they're not stopping just their finances. They want to control everything within their own dominion. They're planning a regional airline through which they'll link up with each other, trade, travel, and talent. That's not just movement, that's mobility. That's what a lot of people are complaining about on the continent anyhow, especially the younger people and the young entrepreneurs are complaining. Even the millionaires and billionaires are complaining about the lack of mobility. So that day is coming. It's about time. Yeah, I know. It's about time we fly over borders instead of being caged by them. And this reminds me again of another Fulani proverb. This time I'm going to hit you with a Fulani proverb. Birds sing not because they have answers, but because they have songs. Birds sing not because they have answers, but because they have songs. What does this mean? Now, this one kind of threw me for a loop. I had to think about this one for a minute. But what it really means, what it speaks to is that the moves that these African leaders are taking, these are expressions of freedom. These are songs of freedom. I think that was Bob Marley. They don't need approval. They need altitude. Birds don't wait around for approval. They have a song to sing and they do it. Real leaders don't wait around for permission. They got a job to do and they get cracking. That's what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. So while the Western media is watching these shifts like it's some soap opera in a language they never bothered to learn, these three nations are composing a brand new symphony, one of sovereignty, unity, and unapologetic investment in Black futures. And it's a melody the rest of the Black world better learn how to dance to before we miss the rhythm altogether. At least that's my 2 cents. Because the Woloffs say even the best cooking pot will not produce food, meaning you can have every tool and still go hungry if you don't act. That's why we see the problems that we see in the Black community in America. If you don't act, what good is the tools? These nations are not just building the pot, they're putting the fire under it. They now have leadership that is saying, we done with the West. We're going to try another way. Now, hopefully this grows. Hopefully it spreads all across the continent, and hopefully it comes across the waters. Because Lord knows we need a new direction in the Black communities of the West. But what y'all think? Y'all think I'm wrong? Y'all think I'm right? Y'all think I'm tripping? Let me know. Like I said, I wasn't going to stay long. I just wanted to get on and had to get everything started late. So, my apologies for that. But like I said, I wanted to go. We took a trip to Burkina Faso for a little bit. And y'all can catch me. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure that you hit whatever hearts, whatever buttons are on TikTok that you're supposed to hit, whatever buttons that are on Instagram and Facebook that you're supposed to hit, please hit them. Come on over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective. You can hit that bell for notifications. You can hit the like button. You can drop a comment on the comment page. Help get my numbers up. But I appreciate you for tuning in. I appreciate you for checking me out. Y'all know I'm about to get on up out of here. Share my screen.
Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective. So